Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Nate, your host of the Artist Exchange, and we are doing a series every 2 weeks with this gentleman, Mr. Taki. Please tell me if I'm saying it right. If I hear you say it, then I'll say it correctly.
Yeah, Taki.
Taki. So
Mhm.
we're doing this series with Mr. Taki. I met him, and we begin to talk about learning styles and communication and various other topics surrounding that. And I wanted to help him kind of expand his reach and give him a platform to be able to give people the information that he had begun to give to me. He does a lot of different things. I'm gonna let him introduce himself. If you missed last week, you can definitely go to the YouTube page at the Artist Exchange and pick up on the last week's conversation, and then this will be every 2 weeks thereafter. It may be a little gap for the holidays, but as long as Taki is coming back, we will continue having these conversations, and they're all about your learning style and your teaching style. And this series is called Communication into Translation. And each one of the conversations are going to have a pivot or perspective. Tonight, we're going to speak a little bit about the women in our lives. Not bashing. This is not a women hating group that we're forming here, but it's really just about communication at the end of the day and how we can better our communication and how everything has involvement in it, our health, our spiritual self, our mindset, all those things, our past experiences. How can we improve on our experiences, our given circumstances, and our trauma, and be able to move forward and be more effective in how we teach, how we learn, and ultimately how we communicate. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to let Taki handle this. I may chime in with a question here and there, but definitely the ball's in your court, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Pretty much what we're discussing is communication into translation. Um, Another way of presenting the information will be the masculine principle, the female principle. And what we mean by principles, we're meaning that everything is duality. Just as much as you can see the front of me, there's just as much of behind me that is not visible. So there's a duality, the seen and the unseen. Is always a duality principle. They make it into a disease and they call it bipolar, but poles are just points. And because you are a point of your mother and you are a point of your father, it is natural to be bipolar. You have your mother traits and your father traits. That is the polarity within us. So what we have coined as the polarity aspect when it comes into communication is called an opinion. And there's only two aspects that an opinion can bring. An opinion is either what you feel or it is what you think. There's nothing else that could be communicated in that point. And we break those principles down into communication, into translation. Communication is the key by the what we would call the most popular term. Communication is the key to a relationship. So communication is the masculine principle shaped like a key, an erection. Translation is the lock, the feminine principle, which takes on to the key. They're complementary aspects. There's no need for a key if there is no lock. The key does not go to the door, it goes to the lock attached to the door. So we have the feminine principle, the lock, the masculine principle, the key. We call that communication, translation. Communication is the key to a relationship. Translation is the lock. All right. So within your communication and your translation, we have this thing called an opinion, which is labeled as a feeling and a thought. Now, a feeling and a thought is governed under four principles, four truths. There's the visual, there's the touch, the involvement, there's the cyclical rhythmic pattern movement, and there's the auditorial sound value. And logic, thought, It's the same, governed under the same four principles, which is you could be a visual memory, visual thinker. You can be an auditorial thinker. You can be a step-by-step cyclical process thinker, or you can be a feeler, involvement, a touch thinker. Those aspects is what govern what we call a thought and a feeling. What we are focusing on is navigating to knowing the difference between those styles and how they operate and how they are being applicable, and the function in which we use when we're communicating to one another as male and female, when we're communicating our thoughts and our feelings, and how those aspects tend to get misunderstood, which we call arguments, tension, I don't want to talk to you. Those aspects, the misunderstoodness of it, because we're not acknowledging the laws. All right. So the first law that we have to understand is the way men give information, the way women give and receive information. Women come from a place of feeling the present moment, what you can actually be involved in, and then transfer that into what it can possibly be, which is the logic. Men go from what it could possibly be, the logic, the past or future, into what it actually is, the present, the feeling. So usually when a woman is asking a man a question, because she is feeling first. Let me backtrack. When I use the word feeling, I want to communicate exactly what I mean by feeling, because I know the word feeling has a lot of different definition based off everybody's experience with the use. Let me explain the function of what I have labeled as a feeling. What I have labeled as a feeling is the function of the present moment. Everything that is presently the moment, things you actually touch. For example, we see the feeling of the hug. You can actually, you don't see the feeling. You actually see two people in the form of what we call embracing. But that embracement signals to us what we can't see is an emotion, right? So we're talking about something you can get involved with. And the present moment is the only thing you can get involved with. So that's why the present moment is the true place of the feeling, because that's actually what is in right now. So that's what I'm labeling as the feeling, the present moment. So the woman comes from the place of now. So when she's in the place of now of feeling something that is tangible, she's going to question you from a tangible place, and she's going to want a tangible answer. So she will ask you, how do you feel about something? Because she's in the feeling form. And what she's going to expect is for you to give a feeling back. What men do is give logic back and not the feeling. Because in order for him to know what he feels, he must first have to have a thought about it, think about it. So he's going to communicate that thought, which is past or future, which cannot exist as tangible as the present. So therefore, it is not simply the truth to the woman at that time. It's not her truth, it's his truth. How she gets to her truth is by allowing him to express his thoughts, respecting that thought, and asking him secondly, how does he feel? That becomes the translation of what he was communicated. Now it is translated, really more so for females, it'll be communicated, because it's being translated, because it's reverse for them. So is being translated, was what was translated is now being communicated to them. So once he tells her how he feels, now that's something that becomes tangible that she can deal with. So him communicating the first answer is not so much she has to put energy into as trying to understand, because she's not going to understand the logic. She just simply has to hear it and respect it. When he communicates the feeling, that's the aspect that she's actually wanting to receive, and that makes the most sense to her. But because she has the feeling, she has the logic, and she has his feeling on it, now she has the complete truth. And then she takes it in and it registers as complete truth. And she has the information that wasn't being truly communicated. It gets very technical because what you're thinking that's being communicated and what you feel as being communicated is the truth. Yet, even though that you brought those two, there is that distinctiveness that binds them all that is not being spoken with words, but it can be translated by having that duality principle that makes it become one. And when it becomes that one, that's what that person hears, because they know your logic and they know your feeling. So now they have your sun and your moon, you gave them a day, and now they can embrace that. And they gain that understanding that the answer that's a true understanding. And it's very difficult to communicate this part in life is because we don't really truly experience this part of conversation, because we don't allow the duality principles to exist. So we just get a logic, and then we get into an argument of it because the feeling wasn't there. An example would be if you ask a man a question, the sun will represent the logic, the moon will represent the sun represent the sun represent the logic, the moon represent the feeling. So when you ask him a question, he's going to give you the sun, right? So there's the sun. And we automatically know that every sun is accompanied with a moon. But because he didn't tell you how he felt, then you're naturally going to put your moon there to complement that sun. But the thing about it, that moon doesn't belong with this universe. It doesn't belong with that sun. It's not a part of that. So therefore, even though it is an emotion, it's not the complementary aspect to that thought, because that complementary aspect was actually the sun, the moon that he's supposed to provide, which is his feeling. So through life, we've only been giving our thoughts, and we haven't been communicating our feeling, because people only allow you to answer a question only one way. And they take that one way, whether it's you communicated your thought or you communicate your feeling, as the whole truth, when the whole truth is a duality, is a feeling and a thought that accompanies together. And when you hear both of those accompany together, that understanding that you get, that is the completion that you're really searching for. That sound, there is no literature to that sound. We haven't formulated enough literature to that sound because we're not applying it yet in order to experience it. But when you apply it, you experience it, and then you resonate with the literature that is needed. And this is what our ancestors was communicating when they were saying that the word, the sound, is the creative force. We were taught that imagination is the creative force. Imagination governs creation. Everything that you see has already been things you have seen before. Your ability to formulate the words that complement that which is seen, that's the key. And this is what you get when you communicate your thought and your feeling, and the person gets both of them. That is what you receive. That literature, you end up having the ability to articulate that new literature that you're seeking, that ability to put words to that which has not been heard before, and then you communicate it back to him. Well, this is how I feel about it, and this is what I think about it. Now he in returns get both your moon and your sun, and then he gains the understanding. And now he has the ability to formulate the literature to that which had not had literature before. And now we have complete understanding. Now we're having dialogue. Now we're actually communicating. Now we're actually bonding now. because we're giving each other what each other needs. Self-preservation first law. My truth, when you ask the question, what do you think about today? I think that today was a great day. That's based off of everything, my thoughts in my mind. Everything from what happened, from every detail that I can calculate. This is what it registers to. So that's self-preservation. Now you ask me, how do I feel? I don't have that ability to do that no more. It's just gonna flow. And because females speak the language of feeling more fluidly, even when a guy decides to be quiet or not to say much, or just be there, oh man, to them, that is everything, because they speak that language. They know it better than we do. Well, when we're thinking we're not saying nothing, we're saying a whole lot. The feeling language and the logical language, two different things. So that's what's going on in the relationships. Now, within your feeling, there are 4 different feeling types. You got your feeling learner. I mean, you got the person whose feeling is touch, involvement. These are the people that when they speak on their feeling, you guys know how they feel. They go into what's touching them, what's around them, what's connected right now. That whatever they feel right now, that's their feeling. Then you have auditorial feelings, which is they're the ones that if you ask them how they feel, they're going to communicate to you what it sounds like, because their present moment is sound. So they're going to communicate the sound of life. Then you have people that are visual feeling, where you ask them how they feel, then it's pretty much what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? Their reaction. You know what I'm saying? That's what their feeling is, what they see. And then you have people that are step-by-step learners, step-by-step feelers. And those are the people you ask them how they feel, they're going to communicate how things are moving for them, the motion, the cycles, the patterns that's around, what's actually in motion. It's like it's going, they'll use words like it's going, or it's doing, or it's building, or it's transitioning, you know what I'm saying, or something like that. Those are the ones that communicate in that style. So you got different types of people that exist in the present moment. And when it comes to thinking style, the same things apply. Everybody thinking, which is past or future, or another word we call memory, is different. You got visual memory, where you ask a person, well, what do you think? What are your thoughts? And you'll actually, them type of people zoom out. They'll look, you know what I'm saying? Because their eyes are thinking for them. They use vision in order to memorize and think. So you ask them, what did they hear happen last night? They can't tell you, because they only have access into the past or the future of things only on sight. They don't carry vision. I mean, they don't carry auditorial. They don't carry the experience or the touch or the feel of it, or the steps to how. They only see a picture. So they zoom out and they're looking for something. Them people, they'll be like, well, I'm looking for something right now. I'm looking, they're visual thinkers. You got people that are feeling thinkers or touch thinkers. Those are the ones that there's no vision in their thinking. It's just simply the experience. Or you ask them what they do yesterday, what did they think about yesterday? They're going to translate to you the way they experienced it. How they felt going through it. I was feeling tired or sleepy and not so good, like that. They're gonna, the way that the feeling, the involvement of it is. Then you have auditorial thinkers, who people that use their ability to speak in order to remember. So they're gonna tell you the value of it. They're only gonna put emphasis on the most valuablest part of things. The whole value, the conclusive thing. The same with, like, as complicated as lightning is. We understand what lightning is when I say the word lightning. As complicated as it is, lightning is the word that encases that whole thing as that value. So you got people that are auditorial thinkers, where they just use only sound in order to communicate, in order to think. And then you have step-by-step thinkers, who remember things only in motion. They only had ability to go into their thinking based off events. It's always going to be an event. What was happening? Things in motion. Their memory is always like, as soon as they go into their memory, it's like boom, it's moving just like that. Their memory is, it's never like they don't have the idea of a fixed memory. It's always in motion. It's always in cycles. Always is a pattern. It's always with things and events. So they'll be the type that will remember a pattern or the way things was building up or what was proceeding into or where it was declining into. You know what I'm saying? The next step and then the next step and then the next step. Their type of memory style, their type of thinking style. So you got those principles operating under the way a person feels and the way a person thinks. And this is where we get the different terminologies that we communicate those styles in. And depending on the person's teaching style and learning style, this is where this confusion comes in that we seem to experience. If I say the word look, if I'm an auditorial learner, look doesn't resonate with me as anything to learn from. If I'm a visual learner and I say look, then look automatically resonates with me as something that needs to be investigated. It's a magnetic field. If I say look to a visual teacher, look is not anything that is new. It's nothing to be taught. You know, there's nothing to gain from it. It's something more so that it just is a compliment. It builds with it. It's not nothing. It's not, you know, it's simply there. It's something to build. It's nothing new. If it's look and a person, if I say the word look and a person is a visual thinker, then me saying look, it automatically send them into la la land. They start drifting. It starts finding out at what point have I seen something before, or is it something of the future? If I say the word look and a person is visual feeling, I say look, it just make everything stop, and right now it becomes whatever's part of their present moment. So when we're using these terminologies, what I'm saying, these terminologies, words, look, listen, feel, step one, step two, depending on the placements of a person's learning style, teaching style, memorization style, and present style, it affects the way that information travels into them, is what I'm saying. So yeah, so that's the pivotal point, is understanding, all right, how do we actually use this information when we're communicating to each other, so that we don't have this frictional problem. The first step is, well, for my auditorial people, I'm going to talk to my auditorial people that's listening right now. Listen to this process. You will have to, for women, you have to address a man by asking him, what does he think about a situation first? And then ask him, how does he feel? When allow him to express what he thinks and just listen, don't necessarily take it in as understanding because that's his truth. And then ask him, how does he feel? And that will be the truth that you're searching for. Put those together, the thought and the feeling, and then you have the whole information that you're seeking, because you need both of them. But what you really wanting is that feeling answer, and you get that feeling answer on the second go. Watch this process for my visual learners. When you're addressing females, when you're addressing a man, ask him, what does he think about whatever it is first? Allow him to express his thoughts. Respect that thought. Don't be against it or anything. Respect the thought, and then ask him, how does he feel? And then that translates, that communicates that communicates the translation of that thought into a feeling form. So then you'll actually understand what it was that's being communicated. So then you will have the understanding in which you see. For my feeling learners, my involvement learners, experience this process. When you are communicating to a man, make sure you ask him, what does he think first? Because he has to express his logic first before he can get to his feelings. So ask him, what does he think first? Allow him to express that thought respectfully. I respect that thought. Then ask him, how does he feel about that thought? Now you get the translation of that thought for you. Now you got the answer that you're actually searching for. But you are able to put them together because he expressed his thought and he expressed his feeling, which is the whole opinion, right? And now you have the whole understanding, and therefore you can actually understand what was being communicated because you got both sides. For my step by step learners, organize this process. First step, ask a man, what does he think about the situation? Second step, ask him, how does he feel about the situation? Following those steps, you will actually experience the answer that you've actually been searching for your life. Don't worry about putting energy into understanding if the first answer was correct or incorrect, beneficial, unbeneficial. Just simply respect the ability to hear it. When you ask for the feeling, it's going to communicate that aspect of what that thought was into feeling form, and you will gain the total understanding in which you seek. Apply this method to experience this method. My ability to speak on it is only giving the value of it. You have to apply the technique in order to gain what it is that is needed necessarily for you to understand. Only through application will you actually get the rest of this lesson. Okay. So what else was gonna talk about?
So real quick, so we had three bullet points that I wanted to make sure we covered as well.
Mhm.
And because we're, I don't want to say we're directing this conversation towards women, but it is our understanding of the miscommun or your rather understanding of how the breakdown happens. So the first one that we talked about was uh, communication with children.
Mhm. Okay. So the communication with children, how does this help with your communication with children? All right. So remember, everybody has a different teaching style. And when I use the word teaching, I don't want it to be confused with like a person standing up at a chalkboard writing down this or that. Teaching is just a label that we put on top of this function, and the function is the way that you give information. If I ask you how you feel about something, you're teaching me how you feel. If I ask you what do you think about something, you're teaching me how you think about it. That's what teaching is. It's the way you give. What is the role of a teacher? To give information, right? All right. Your learning style is the way you receive information. The learning style is the label that is placed on the function, and this function is simply the way that you grab this, the way that you hold it, right? The way that you magnetize it. That's your learning style. Now, let's say listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. For example, this particular mother is a visual teacher. That means the way that she give information is pictorial. When she uses her words, she uses visual terminologies. When she's communicating, she's painting a picture. So she's a visual teacher. And let's say her son may be auditorial. So like for example, like we had the picture of the visual aspect of nature up. So that mother being a visual teacher will be giving her son this picture, right? This is what she'll be communicating. Not so much the picture, but even in her terminology, it'll be describing that which is the tree, the lake, these and that things, right? All right. Her son being auditorial, right? Listen to this process, organize this process, watch this process, experience this process, is an auditorial learner who is only interested in the value, which is the sound. So when she's communicating the visual aspect, she's breaking down the visuals, but what he wants is the value of the sound, which is what is the total purpose of the picture. Child wants to hear. That's that child's learning style being auditorial. It is more concerned with hearing the sound of it, not so much the visual picture. So it's not that the mother is teaching the child wrong or the child has a learning disability or anything like that. It's just simply the teaching style is not matching the learning style. So how do we fix this problem? Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. The visual teacher, which is the mother who is communicating to the auditorial learner, which is the child, will have to formulate her sentence, her introductory sentence in the way that triggers the child into learning. And since the child is an auditorial learner, the trigger word for an auditorial learner would be listen. Soon as an auditorial learner hears the word listen, they can't control the ability to instantly get into learning mode. So he's listening now. And what the mother would say is listen to this view. Now that he knows that he's listening to a view, all of the information that was pictorial now becomes sound information because he's now listening to the view. And now everything makes sense because he learns through the sound of it. So this is the form that helps with communicating to your children. It may be a child who is a hands-on learner, and let's say the mother is a visual teacher. Then the visual teacher will say to her child, experience. When the child hears experience, it automatically puts it into a feeling, into an involvement, right? And when it gets into the involvement, it's like, what am I involving into? Experience this view. So it's experiencing the picture. So now it has the ability to actually learn from it because now it has communicated it in the language in the way that that child learns, only through the introductory of the trigger words. Let's not forget, trigger words is not something that is new to us because we say it all the time. Goodbye, good morning, hey, how you doing? Hey, check this out. Come here right quick. You feel me? Hey, step one, step two. Boom, I got you. We say these words all the time, and these words are connected to the 4 different type of truths. We're just not used to being able to understand the literature behind it, is what I'm communicating. So listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. By being able to become aware of your learning style and your teaching style, this helps you to be able to communicate with your children better. And the way that you achieve being able to find out what type of learner they are, you simply ask your child this question. Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. If I was to teach you something that you do not know exists, would you want me to tell it to you, show it to you, get you involved, or provide the steps? Their answer is going to reveal to you their learning style. They're either going to say they'll have to hear it, and children are really the best ones. Adults kind of complicate things when you ask them these questions because adults deal with a lot of traumatization of having to be right or fighting within themselves of being wrong. It's kind of hard to find out how can you be right when you got simple choices. We want to overcomplicate things. But children, not so much that they're already living in that element of simplicity. So when they hear, do you need me to tell it to you, show it to me, show it to you, get you involved to provide the steps, children are very simplistic and they're just going to simply tell you exactly what it is. They say, oh, you're going to tell it to me. Oh, you're going to have to show it to me. Oh, you had to get me involved. Oh, I need you to break it down. They already know. They know. The children come into the world already trying to figure out who they are. It's just the world is not designed to complement those aspects. It's too busy trying to tell them who they're supposed to be instead of complementing who they are. So what we're doing now is formulating literature for children to be able to communicate who they are and not who we're trying to mold them into be. They're already on their purpose. What we are trying to do is establish an environment that your purpose can be met by being able to embrace who you are by communicating to who you are. You're not going to change it. that's for sure. So you ask them that question, and then therefore you know how to what I would call power word, or what the ancients would call a mantra. that you would use in introductory. So if they say, well, you got to tell it to me, then you got to say listen. If they say, well, you got to show it to me, then you have to say watch. If they say, oh, you got to get me involved, you got to say experience. If they say, oh, I need you got to what is it? I need step by step. Then you say organize. All right. So then you say, okay, listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. If you were to teach me something that I do not know exists, are you going to tell it to me, show it to me, get me involved, provide the steps? Now, when you ask the second question, you have to eliminate one of the four in which they chose. So if they chose auditorial, then you're not going to put auditorial in the lineup. If they chose visual, then you're going to take visual out of the lineup. If they chose get involved, you're going to take get involved out of the lineup. If they, just showing the technique. So therefore, it's only three options. Once they chose one, then there's only three options left. Then, what I'm saying, once they choose, you still get an option. You want me to tell it what you want? Are you going to, if you were to teach me something that I do not know exists, are you going to tell it to me, show it to me? If they say, okay, well, I'm going to tell it to you, then they're auditorial. They're auditorial teachers. They're going to teach you the value of things. They're always going to be communicating the value of it. What's the value in it? If they're step by step, then they're going to be communicating to you the way it's organized, the breakdown of it, the cycles of it, the motion of it, how it's the beginning, the maturing, and the ending stage is the process. If they are visual, then they're going to be communicating to you what it looks like, the focal points, what I'm saying, the picture of it, just the focal, what is actually there. If they are a experience or get involved learn, then they're going to be communicating you the experience, the way it feels. So therefore, the way they're going to give the information. So once you know their teaching style, then you can help them communicate to you what they're trying to say, because it becomes very complicated when a person doesn't communicate that. You know what I'm saying? And you have to formulate how to, in your head, like if I'm talking to a person and they are a visual teacher and I'm an auditory person, when they're communicating, I say to myself, listen to this view. So therefore, everything that they're saying, I'm actually digesting it. If they're a feeling teacher, then I would say, listen to this experience. So everything that they're teaching, I'm learning. If they're step by step, now I say, listen to this process. So then everything that they're communicating. So I repeat it in my head, because once I hear it, it instantly translates. The same thing like how they do them little things that they put on people's ear, or them little things they carry around their phone, and they can speak it in another language and it translate it into English, because it has like that thing of being able to decode it. So that becomes that tool in me, because I know my learning style, and everybody is not teaching my learning style. So how I translate it for myself, I simply, once I know their teaching style, I just take it upon myself to say, listen to whatever style it is, and then it instantly transforms it to me being able to learn, because it is a tool of putting things in place, is what it is. It's showing you that there's laws to communication, and it shows you how to exercise those laws. Once you start exercising them and applying them, you become stronger and stronger at it. And then you'll start developing the ability to be able to put literature to the aspect of life that you have not heard literature to. And you'll be able to communicate with people on levels within our existence that have not been able to be communicated to. Not to say like spooky or scary places, but being able to put literature to the aspects of what we're really trying to communicate. But because of the literature that we have, the formula, the arrangement of words, and the way we've been taught by TV, radio, certain way to formulate our sentences, that when we're trying to communicate certain things, we're just using the same terms. An example that would be like Pokemon. When anytime Pikachu will want something, he'll say Pikachu or Pika Pika. Pikachu. You know what I'm saying? But he's trying to communicate different aspects of himself, but because his literature is only Pikachu, then it's only being able to say that. So the way we've been taught to use language is a hindrance of it, because we're trying to communicate deeper aspects of ourselves using similar sentences that accompany other aspects. When we apply this technique, we will find the literature to be able to communicate that which we haven't had the literature to do, is what I'm communicating. And this is what's going to help build a stronger bond to your children, and the children to build a stronger bond to you as well. This is something that has not been experienced, but hey, apply it and see. That's the only thing that I can say. Apply it and see.
The next one is communicating their past.
All right. So when it comes to communicating the past, listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. It's going back into the logic. And what I mean by the logic is you only have the ability to have access to your past based off your memory style. And you can find a person's memory style by simply asking them, when it comes to your memory, do you remember what you heard? Do you remember what you felt? Do you remember what you saw, or do you remember the events that took place? Now, this is the way you are able to travel into your memory. So people communicate their past based off their ability, their access to it. If you're a visual thinker, then you only can communicate, you're only going to have access into your past only through the visions. Keep in mind, the truth exists in four principles. Totality. But within that totality, there's limitations. So if you're a visual thinker, then you only have the ability to go into the past and the future based off sight, but you do not carry the sound of what was going on, nor the experience, nor the movement of it. You only have the ability to travel there in sight. So because you only have the ability to go there in sight, this is why I tend to be like, the things when you call, I forgot things, I don't remember certain things. The things that you don't remember are the things that wasn't visual. What you forgot was the auditorial. What you forgot was the experience. What you forgot is the movement. But you definitely hold all of the visual. And then you could communicate to somebody who it may be an auditorial memory, and they're like, well, you remember this said, it may not resonate with you because you wasn't holding calculations to the sound of it, but based off what the value that they put to it, you know what I'm saying? It could connect to the vision of what you had, but you weren't particularly like, I don't know, that was really what was, you know what I'm saying? And it may not be the exact thing that was said, but it was the value of what was being spoken. You get what I'm saying? So you got people that have visual thinkers that had ability to communicate their past based off pictorial information, painting a picture. That's just the way that they traveled it. That's not the way they communicate it, give it to you, what I mean in their teaching style. That's the way that they access it. So their visual memory, but they're an auditorial teacher, then they're going to be able to travel in their memories through the vision. They're going to be having access to it in picture form. But since they're an auditorial teacher, they're only going to communicate that which is in picture form only in the value of it, but not actual through the picture. So they'll be like, in them, they're seeing the whole picture, but the way they're giving it to you is only the value of the picture, not actually the pictorial evidence of it, but only the value comes out of it. You may have a person who is a step-by-step memory. They remember events, so they only can communicate their past based off the motion, the events, the build-up or the decline of things. And let's say that person is a step-by-step memory or cyclical memory, but they're an auditorial teacher. Then that means in their world of thought, they're traveling, they remember the events, but the way that they're going to communicate to you is only the value of the event. Right? But in them, it's traveling, but they're just doing only the value of the travel. Right? If they're an experience or a feeling memory, then they had the ability to travel into their past only through how they experience, through what they feel. They don't have no vision. They can't tell you what it is they see. It ain't really when they're going, this ain't no see. It's just really just, it's blankness. You know what I'm saying? So there ain't no visual of it. It's just only how they felt. But they're auditorial teachers. So they're traveling there through their experience, through their involvement of what it feels like, but they're only communicating out to you the value of an experience. not the actual experience, the value of it. You see what I'm saying? Or, for example, you have an auditorial memory who remembers the value of the sound. The value, they just remember the sound, what they heard, what they were hearing, but they're a visual teacher, so they're remembering it. They had the ability to travel there in their memory and their past through the value, but when the way they're giving it to you is the way the value is shown. The way it's shown, they're giving a picture of a value, not the actual value. So yeah, that's how we're communicating our past. So those people use certain words based off of their style of memory or their thinking style, same thing. And they use those terminologies in order to communicate their past. So some people will be like, I see, it looked to me like it was like that, their visual memory. If they're like, sounds to me like it was crazy, auditorial memory. They like boom, there you go. I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? They're step by step because they're gonna use things like instruments, boom or bam, or step one, step two is always motion or climb up is in motion, and then you may have a person that's who are missing an experience memory who like I feel, you know what I'm saying, like I assume, you know what I'm saying, the way it feel to me, they're feeling memory. So the terminologies is still communicating the way that they think. So when you start understanding people placements, right, then you start being able to see when they're communicating to you a thought, when they're communicating to you their teaching, when they're communicating to you their learning, and when they're communicating to you their present moment. The thing that's right now, the place where I am now with it is amazing to me when people are communicating something that they learn, because before I knew this information, when a person's communicating to me something that they learned, it almost is being took as something they already knew. So people are not necessarily going to tell you that they just learned this. The way we've been taught to communicate is not to compartmentalize it, you know what I'm saying, the separating of what I just learned, what I'm actually teaching, what I remember, and what I'm experiencing at the moment. We don't label it that way. But when you start knowing the placements and you start listening to those key words and you following it, you just seeing the way their energy is jumping from teaching, learning, memory, present moment. You're like, wow, that is crazy right there. And you're like, okay, wow. So this is that out of everything that was said, you just learned this. Or even if a person is telling you their memory of something, you can actually hear when they're revisiting a memory what they just learned from that memory. They didn't been knew that, they just learned that right then and now. And this is what they're teaching from it, right? Man, it is amazing. That's what I'm saying.
It's I agree with you in terms of, especially me being a teacher. When I see a child get it and they adapt it to who they already are,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an amazing process because it feels like they've known it forever, and you've just opened up or turned a light on for them. Um,
Facts.
but I definitely get that perspective, and I think once people begin to learn this theory that you are kind of unearthing in this moment, I think a lot of our communication uh, hiccups will be dissolved. You won't feel like every person is lying to you, or you won't feel like every person is exaggerating or bluffing, or because you'll understand their perspective and how they saw something or how they received something. And I think a lot of that miscommunication won't necessarily be missed anymore because you'll be able to identify how they received it and not only see it from your perspective.
Man, hey, excellently put. Is what I all I can say. Excellently put. Like that is it. And when you are able to see it, that is what gives you that, what we call, when we're not able to see it, that's what we call the misunderstanding or the not connected. But when
Hmm.
we actually see it to experience, instead of it being like something just happens over, like under not in our control, like it just seemed to be random, like, oh, they finally get it. We now actually have the steps onto knowing how to achieve that without not on no random stuff, but actually being in full control of that. Having and now
Mhm.
it's no longer a random thing. It's actually something you can actually control whenever you feel like it.
Right, right, right. So the last one was uh hold on, I'm trying to pull it out. The last one was translating the ego.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the ego goes into this learn it goes is attaching to the learning part.
Mm-hmm.
So listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. The ego is this aspect which we can control what it is we learn. I can choose what I'm going to learn or not going to learn. That's what is actually unearthing or being made. Now we're pulling the cover off and we're actually exposing this invisible thing, and now we can see it now. That's what's been called the ego the whole time. Our ability to where we are trying to this aspect of where we feel or think that we can control what it is we learn. If you are a visual learner, tell me how did you stop that?
Mm-hmm.
How did you stop it? If you are an experienced learner, tell me how did you stop the experience of this happening?
Mm-hmm.
You are an auditorial learner, tell me how did you stop it? If you are a step by step learner, tell me how did you stop it? You didn't have a choice in what it is that you learn, and we think and feel that we can choose what it lessons we're going to have in life. We simply don't.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. And until we can understand that our ego is the part in which we are saying, well, I can choose what I'm going to learn now. No, you can't. But what you're saying is, if you're a visual person, this person saying, well, let me teach you something, like, I'm sorry, I ain't nothing you have to teach me. You already been taught because they gave you the visual representation of them. You couldn't do
Mm-hmm.
nothing with it. You may be auditorial. The person come and say, let me teach you something. I don't want to learn. You already been taught because they already taught you the sound. You already learned the sound. You couldn't, wasn't nothing you can do about it. If you step by step, the motion, how that person moving up to you, I'm good, I'm good. I don't know what you want. You couldn't stop that lesson. You already got the process. If you're experiencing that person is in your environment, this is happening right now. This is what it is. I don't know if I want to feel that or not. Regardless, you experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
What part are you trying to say that you have control over? Is false. And that's where we beat ourselves up at, because we think we can control or manipulate the lessons in life. This is why mistakes happen in learning. That's why it's there, because that's where you're going to make them in. And the ego is a part of that aspect, because in the beginning we thought we can control it until now we can see how. We
Okay.
simply accept it. That is the ego.
So overall, my question that I had for you, and when we were talking to kind of prepare for today, um, my question was, what is the difference between communication and our learning style?
The difference between, all right, listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. The difference between communication and learning style is the communication part has been subjective to not being under no type of laws and regulations. It's assumed to be freedom. Your learning style are the laws that govern the process of how it's going to be understood. So
Mm,
that's where the style comes in. Communication is the free, it's just the whole thing. Like karate is free, but there is styles to karate. I can do this and do that and do this. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying this is karate. Yes, it
mhm,
is about motion, but what style is that? There's laws that govern a particular style.
mm.
So that would be
Okay.
the difference.
And I think I use the word difference to kind of pinpoint it and narrow it down. But when we are in communication with each other, and you've already said the learning style is how we receive, and the
Mm-hmm.
teaching style is how we give.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we, I guess it's hard to ask that question because it's so obvious. But when we're in, what I'm most attracted to, and you saying and you teaching me this, is how do we, one, prevent a lot of the miscommunication? How do we learn to listen? Because this is forcing me to listen in a different way than what I'm typically used to listening. Uh, and I typically treat everybody like they were a student. So that's my listening style. So I'm listening for, things that are false, things that are incorrect, so I can improve that in you. But this is forcing me to learn and to listen in a different way. So when I ask what's the difference, I think I really meant, how do they work in conjunction with each other?
Mm.
Our
Okay.
communication style, our learning style, our teaching styles.
Okay. Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. So the communication is pretty much outward energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The learning style will be the receiver of that energy, right?
Okay.
So that learning style, the way it receives it, gives form to that energy. The learning style could be a cup. So the communication, we could put you that as water.
Okay.
So the water is coming in, that's communication. The learning style will be this cup. So that water comes in, it has to formulate and form into that cup in order to hold.
Mm,
Or I can have a triangle, and that water, and it's not a cup, it's just a regular triangle. And you pour that water on that triangle, and it's going to be some coming on the top and then some going on the sides. That's his learning style.
mm,
Or it could be a face rag, and the water is being poured on the face rag, and the face rag doesn't do nothing but absorb it and swells up. That's the learning style. So that
mm,
would be how it complements it. The water is the communication, but what is being communicated to, who has to learn it, the water ends up having to take form of that, complementing it. It's not going to fall on that triangle the same way it's going to fall on that cup. It's not going to
mm,
fall on that cup on the same way it's going to fall on that towel. But if we're assuming that this triangle is supposed to function as a cup, and it's not holding, I want to drink some water, but it's not a cup, it's just a little bit under. I'm like, it's just not functioning. We're getting frustrated. That's because we're not understanding the laws. That's what we're doing in communication. We're just that blind to that much of the obvious because we have not been taught it as obvious as it should be to everything else that we do in life. This aspect was not put into
yeah.
place.
And as I said, so you and I met at a point where I was frustrated with being misunderstood, and frustrated with what I see as people choosing negativity and confusion and misunderstanding when it comes to relationships. And us trying to be better and improve ourselves. You've said basically all of this is tied into how we eat. Can you explain that connection?
So listen to this process, ex- listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. What we eat plays a major role into the way that we receive information
Mm-hmm.
because we got blood that has to circulate oxygen to the brain. We got blood that has to circulate that has to get pushed through heart and through the extremities and other muscles in the body. We got nerves that have to send messages from the brain to the body. And then we have skin, eyes, ears, and mouth in order to receive those aspects of life, and they function based off of the vitamin and mineral content that's inside of the body, what the body is made out of. When we eat foods that are high in sugary diet, it causes the body to be hyper. And when the body is hyper, it causes a faster heart rate. And when you have a faster heart rate, you have a more shallow aspect of breathing. And with a more shallow aspect of breathing, you have a more slower response to the circulation of blood in the body. And with a more slower response to blood in the body, the more slower the memory, the more hyper you are, the more the nerves are having to work even more harder. The blood is having to push a little bit more stronger, and
Mm-hmm.
it's being stripped of the vitamin contents that's supposed to be with the sugar, like inside of an apple or a watermelon with the vitamin A, selenium, zinc, magnesium. And when that sugar comes into the body knows to break it down the same way it's been breaking it down for thousands and thousands of years with its family. So when it comes in without that magnesium, that calcium, that vitamin A and C, it strips it from out of your body, which causes high blood pressure, glaucoma, arthritis, which is what we're communicating is nothing but loss of mineral content in the body, which forms diseases. And when you are in a disease state, it lessens your ability to be able to have feelings, to be able to think, to be able to reason, to be able to be rational. Your diet plays a role into that. They have behavior modifiers in food that target children, and the Doritos and the Takis and the potato chips. They tell you it's EDTAs, and they cause learning disabilities. They cause hyperactivity. They cause tantrums.
Mm-hmm.
So this affects your ability to teach and to learn, because you will be an auditorial person, but because of the high sugary diet, you only have a real short attention on it, because you got to
Mm-hmm.
be, you know what I'm saying, got to be stimulated at all times.
Right.
Versus, so that's how it affects your diet, affects your teaching and your learning and your memory, because sugar damages the nerves, so therefore it causes lack of memory.
This, I mean, I'm gonna continue to say this. Talking about this in this way from this perspective is mind blowing, and I just wish more people could communicate with each other in this way in terms of learning this,
Mm-hmm.
so we can more effectively communicate both in us giving and receiving, as you said, of the information. Because I think a lot of people right now, I see a lot of people in this frustrated state because they're not able to really communicate what they're feeling and what they're experiencing, and what has happened to them. So that often kind of it often comes across as like severe depression or severe mood swings or hypertension. And it's really just a lack of, should I say, ability or know how to communicate what's on my chest, how I'm feeling. And then you have the opposing individual who just doesn't care because they're going through the same things. So when you begin to talk this way and share this theory that you're creating, it made so much sense to me as a teacher, to me as a friend, to me in my romantic relationship, to me in my platonic friendships and my biz. It made so much sense when there's miscommunication, and I'm clearly saying what I feel and what I think, And it can't be that you're upset at my truth or that what I'm saying is true or false or whatever. It just sounds like we're saying two different things, and I can hear it. And I'm trying to say, no, 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 no. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, always trying to auto correct myself. And
Mm,
that turned into me not wanting to communicate. So, me taking myself out of spaces and communicating from a distance or lack thereof, no communication. But as you said, it's so obvious that it's not obvious. It's
mm.
like if it was a gun, it would have shot us in our head already. Like that's how I see it.
And it makes sense, exactly just like how you put it right then, because it just hit me then. Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. What we're calling the not so obvious is the fact that we haven't experienced it.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
because we haven't experienced it, we take that as it's not being, that it's not there.
And what
But
is the
when
it?
we,
Just so we clear, what is the it that we haven't experienced?
this style of communication,
Okay.
this balance and harmony that this brings is
Mhm.
not a part of our experience. It's a part of our experience to have disharmony.
Right.
So when we're communicating the laws, it revealed to us this is what was going on the whole time.
Mhm.
Now I can actually see that was at one point invisible to me.
Right.
Now becomes visible because I experienced it now, and now it
Mhm.
becomes visible. So we hadn't experienced it yet, but it's a part of us. But we have to get to the laws in order to get it. And our ancestors create a very good story, which keeps solidifying this. You send information to me of the war between Horus and Seth, and
Mhm.
how Horus kept having these stalemates with Seth, and because a stalemate is not necessarily a victory, but for Seth to still maintain his power because it was a stalemate. So he
Mhm.
still was in a position of power until Horus heard about and got knowledge of a deity that Seth had no jurisdiction over. And that deity was Tahuti, or who they call Thoth.
Mhm.
And Thoth who represents as the law guider, you know what I'm saying? That is the creative expression that holds the laws that govern things of God. Like when we say the laws of God is something that was written down or the word it was spoken, Thoth is that person that's oversees that. And Horus went to Thoth and found out the laws that govern order. And he was then able to what they said trick, or really was true. Well, they could say trick, but really he went and convinced Seth that even though he was doing the negative things that he was doing, he still had to do those negative things in a proper order. And because he acknowledged and adhered to that, then it let it know it's a place and time for everything. And that's how Horus was able to restore balance, because it was able to put things in its proper place. And it came from knowing the laws. Seth represented the emotionality of justice, chaos, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But everything is based off of laws. And once you know the way laws govern it and you start applying those laws, laws put everything into its proper place and boundary with understanding. And that's how everything came back into the harmonistic balance again.
And
So,
it's interesting. It's interesting that you tell that story because for me, I'm a feeler. I feel, I'm driven by my passion and my love for people and
mhm,
wanting to help them. And we've been taught culturally that we have to remove our feelings from our day to day experiences and awareness because our feelings will get us into trouble. And it may be very much the truth. When you have too much of one thing, it is never a good thing. And me trying to find that balance is what these conversations have kind of helped me to uh, obtain a little bit better and a little bit more. But I am a person who my feelings have to be involved because I see too many people lacking or choosing to omit feeling, which puts me in a place of not trusting them. Because anybody who can't tap into their feelings, I feel will be the exact extreme as my over feeling could be.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense?
Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. It makes plenty sense. And that aspect is existing because in childhood we was never taught literature to our emotions when it was when they were abundant. So
Mm-hmm.
if a child is playing with another child and the child gets tired of playing with another child and the child hits the child, boom. You know what I'm saying? Because the child doesn't have a vocabulary to know how to express this feeling of I wanted to play with you. Now I no longer want to play with you.
Mm-hmm.
We now teach our children how to communicate that. So then they just go off of the emotion of just because they don't have a literature. And then when they act in that manner, we punish them for lack of knowing. So therefore, as we mature, it formulates into we're hiding our feelings. This comes
Mm-hmm.
from childhood because we wasn't put literature to the feeling. Instead of the child being taught, look, you hurt your friend when you did that, and allowing the friend and then comforting the friend and then tell your friend you apologize. You have to communicate to your friend you no longer want to be playmates, right? You don't want to play no more. You are done with playing and you want to go away from the situation. So you communicate that when you feel that. I don't want to play anymore. I want to play by myself. Therefore, now when they feel that emotion, they know how to have literature to that instead of hitting or acting out, letting emotion. They actually have a literature. They have a law system in order to set boundaries and limitations. We're not taught emotional literature, and that affects us all the way into our adulthood. And this is what we call not being able to express our feelings or not being real with how we feel or shunning a feeling as being something negative. Nothing is negative, nothing is positive. Positive and negative are aspects that are borrowed. Our goal here on life is to find the limitations and the boundaries, to organize them and arrange them and put them in their proper place.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
So, one, I have to acknowledge the individuals that are tuning in. If you have any questions for Taki, tonight's conversation and topic is lost in communication, lost in uh, translation. And we're speaking more so about our learning styles and our teaching styles. The learning style, as Taki has defined it, is how we receive information. Our teaching style is how we give information. And that translation versus communication is that male versus female aspects of ourselves. And for me, these conversations are very important because we are losing our community. I feel like we're losing community because we don't know how to talk to each other. We don't know how to communicate with each other outside of arguments. Not that everything is going to be love and cotton candy, but we have to, even in those moments of fire and struggle and strife, we still have to learn how to, at our base selves, communicate. Because if I don't know what's on your heart and you don't know what's on my heart, we've just missed the experience that we were both supposed to share in this moment and learning a lesson. Um, so Taki has begun to research and has been researching and discovering these learning styles. One of the things that I want to do real quick uh, is go through the images that we have and explain to people specifically what that learning style is and how
Okay.
that those people learn. Can we
All
do
right.
that? So
Okay.
I'm gonna start with this one.
All right. So listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. The feeling learner is the person that has to be involved. That's the person that goes off of the feeling of life. It's not a visual context. It's more of is the invisible aspect. even though invisible is still visual, but that's the best way we can kind of bring into the aspect of what a visual is limited at.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it comes to the feeling, because you may not see what that person, you may see this person dressed real nice, but you still can't see what they've been through.
Yeah.
That's their experience, their feeling. It's
Mm-hmm.
so it's pretty much the invisible part, but you can get involved with that. You know what I'm saying? You may not know what but they could hug you, right? They could be dressed nice and they can give you a hug and like, oh man, you've been through a lot. You don't see it, you can feel it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? That that aspect, being in the presence, energy around, that, the way that they communicate, there, it's all about the involvement. I gotta touch things. What does it feel like? Get it, put it in my hands. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you could tell me this and you could show me this true enough, and you could break it down. But the reality of it is there is something that feels to it. You know what I'm saying? And only I have to grab this. I have to feel this in order to know it's real. I have to be involved with that, because
Mm-hmm.
that's how they learn. Those are typical to people that they gonna learn you by, they gonna test you. You know what I'm saying? They gonna grab you. They gonna, you know what I'm saying? And we gonna bump, we gonna square up, or we gonna push away, or I'm gonna grab. They have to be involved. Those are the feeling learners. Those are the ones you have to say experience. Experience, when you're communicating to an experienced learner, when they hear the word experience, it automatically has a magnetic effect on them, because when you say the word experience, it automatically is the entirety of the feeling. The experience is all of it.
So describe. So what I'm about to ask you to do, I'm gonna explain at the end. But for this type of person, what's what does that person typically look like in day to day life? So we'll have a intro to how to identify that person, if possible, by sight.
Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. That person would typically be the person that'll give you, that be open up to give you a hug, or they gotta touch you. They're gonna show emotion. They're gonna their in their vibe is close up and personal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a feeling learner. They learning you. They up close and personal. They learning you. They doing that in order to learn. They ain't,
Yeah.
that's just how that's their learning style. They may not like the fact that sometimes they got to get up close, but that's
Mm-hmm.
how they got to learn it.
Yeah.
That's just how they got to go through it in order to learn it. So it's good. Like I said, everything has duality. Is good and it's bad. The good side is that, okay, the feeling person, the feeling learner, they real about how they feel. They how they when they learn it, that's they genuinely feeling that way. They mad, they sad, they happy. This how they learning that from this aspect.
In the moment. In the
In that
moment.
in that moment. It may not be the right thing for the moment, but at least they real about it. So they have struggles with, oh man, I hated that my feelings show like that. You know what I'm saying? But they're learning it though. It's not something that can be controlled. It's just, oh.
Right.
So,
So the next one is the visual learner.
all right, listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. The visual learner is the one that is always seeing the way things is responding to them.
Mm-hmm.
Is they have to see it. If they don't see it, it don't exist. They usually are the ones that, if they're learning something, they're the aspect of learning, especially if they're telling a story of something, they can tell you everything and how everything responded, but they are not aware of what they were doing to make it happen, because they can't see themselves. They only can see outside of them. You know what I'm saying? So they're looking at everything, the reaction of everything. Everything is still for them. They have a focal point. They have to see
Mm-hmm.
it. So they're actually using them, be the type that you may say you nose it in a mug. You know what I'm saying? Because they gotta see something. You probably be doing something, trying to hide something. They you look up, they looking at you. You like, what the heck? That's because they use their eyes to learn. You know what I'm saying? So they can't help it. They ain't trying to. If you trying to hide something, they learn that you trying to hide it. They learn what you're trying to hide. They can't help it. They see it. You know. So they'll be the
Mm-hmm.
ones that you'll see that they seeing and observing everything. They gotta see it. They ain't now you know they don't want you to get them involved in. They ain't too big on like getting involved. Like I rather you I watch you do it and I get it. They don't need to do all the talking and none of that. It just you all right, I can see it. As long as I can see it, I can do it.
Mm. It's just interesting. Uh, I see many of us having certain degrees of all of these things inside of us, and then we have maybe one that's more prominent. But I know this person because typically they don't need instructions; they can just put something together because they can see it, or they're good at being around people and understanding who people because they can just see things that typically a lot of people don't take the time to do. But our visual learners, um, well, you kind of answered that question already, like who this person would be in real life. So I just want people to get a kind of a overall understanding outside of a classroom setting what these learning styles are in real life application, not just in a classroom. The next one is auditory learner.
All right. Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. The auditory person is the person that learns only through the sound. They don't have to. They're really the type that's they don't want to be involved. They don't have to be involved in the project with everybody, and they don't have to see it. They just need to hear it. If
Mm-hmm.
they just know what they just tell me the value of it. If communicate the value of it. This whole aspect is because this has to happen and this has to happen. They're the types that pretty much probably will have like YouTube or something playing and they're not even watching the YouTube. They're just doing other things while listening to it and they ain't got the whole thing. They're the type that don't even watch basketball or football, but they can tell you who is in the league and who is in the lead and who's the top players and all of that, and they don't even watch it just because people are communicating the most valuable is ones or the most compared. So the most what the value of it is was making the game last or was making it to be important. They're able to receive that because they hear the value. So they have to hear it. You could talk about it, you know what you're talking about, then they could get it. So all they have to do is hear the sound of it.
Now, typically, and I'm gonna get to LaJoy's question real quick, but typically, an auditory learner is often confused with a visual learner. A visual learner can see you do something and replicate it or catch on, whereas an auditory learner, if you give them the instructions, like
You gotta be they
they
gotta
can
hear you talk
typically,
about it.
right, they can typically grasp it through conversation.
Right.
And that it's a different type, but those two learners typically get confused for each other. And as a teacher, I now am clearly seeing the difference between the two,
Mm-hmm.
and the that fine line between them. But Lovejoy says, what if you have more than one learning, teaching, or memory style?
Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. There is more than one learning, teaching, and memory style, but each person only has one of those. They are broken down into four aspects of our being, and because they are all circulatory, we assume that they are more than one.
Mm-hmm.
It can be very clear into how I believe Joy is if I'm not mistaken, an organized learner, step by step learner. So a person that's a step by step learner typically tends to ask the question of if there are more than one, because they learn in numberistic forms. So because you learn in numberistic forms or step-by-step cyclical forms, it will be it can be took
Mm-hmm.
as it's being more than one, but it's really cyclical step by step because that the totality of that style is really
Right.
it could be this way, then it's that way, then it's this way, and it's that way. But that's pattern. That's
Mm-hmm.
patterns. A visual learner doesn't see pattern. Visual learner just see like my hand. They don't see
Mm-hmm.
the pattern. But a step-by-step person see, well, it's more than one finger. It's one
Right.
finger, two finger, then it's it's actually four fingers and a thumb. So they're seeing that. But the visual person just see the hand and they just see the angles and you know what I'm saying? But they're not, it's not it's different. So what I'm saying is it makes sense that the question is if there's more than one memory, teaching, and learning style, and what I'm saying overall as collective whole, there is, but to the individual, we're limited to having a learning style, a
Mm-hmm.
teaching style, a memory style, and a present moment style. And you have each one of those aspects placed in those positions.
And for example, for a student, I have this is my learning style. But because I've had teachers that force their teaching style on me, I may have been influenced or I learned to do it their way. But this way is probably my dominant way, but I've been forced to learn it their way. And I think that's sometimes how people confuse it in terms of maybe I have more than one. Just like I said, the auditory and the visual learner are often confused with each other. So I think that is sometimes how we kind of mix them in together, the different learning styles. So thank you, Lovejoy, for your question. And the last one that we have on the list is, as you said, the pattern learner.
Mhm. There's the pattern learner. Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. Pattern learner, just like I was describing, is going to see the patterns. And just like
Mm-hmm.
within this pattern, it's like, well, it's all notes. So then that means that I know all the different notes. That is true, but the totality of it is still a pattern. It is still steps, though. That's what I'm
Right,
saying.
right.
So the pattern, because pattern is cyclical, and cyclical puts everything that is created in motion. Like there's a feeling, but a feeling doesn't last forever. Even a feeling goes off, it still has to move and go to another feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Even a vision, which is a picture, still is a picture and still has to go to another picture. Even a
Right.
sound, which is a sound, still has to go into another sound. So everything is operating off of cyclical information, just like everything that is cyclical information is still an experience, so it's still something that is felt.
So
Just as
who
well.
was this person, and so we could get an example of who that person may be in real life. What's an example of who that person would be in real life?
Of a step by step or a pattern learner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. A pattern learner, a step by step learner is a person that has to have things broken down. So then I'm like, all right, so what's the first step? The first step is you get the horn and you put it there. All right, now blow the horn. Beep, beep. All right, you heard the horn? All right, yeah. Now the next step is get them pliers and rotate them to the left. All right, you rotate them. Now tighten up real tight. You want, as soon as you feel it get tight, all right, let it go because you don't want it to break. All right, boom. Now the next step is lift it up and place it up on top of that counter and hand it to Mark. All right. So within
Mm-hmm.
that aspect, you had sound, which you had to blow the horn. Then you had the visual of who you giving it to. Then you had the feeling of lifting it up. All of that was steps, though. Those are
Mm-hmm.
steps. That's pattern. That's
Mm-hmm.
the cycles. It wasn't just a straight visual. It wasn't just straight feeling. It was steps. Because in order to achieve it, you had to go through the steps, through the breakdown of the achievement. That's what a pattern cyclical learner is. They have to have it broken down. They can't have it just hold like a visual person. That just let me see. You ain't got to break nothing down. You show me the picture, I see how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Auditorial person, look, just tell me what it is. You ain't got to break nothing down. Just tell me the value of what it is. As long as you communicate the value, I got it. What is the value? And I just need to know it's valuable. The
Mm-hmm.
the feeling person need to know, hey, do it with me. You ain't got to go through all that. Just do it with me. Whatever you doing, I'm doing it.
Right. Right. And it makes it so much simpler when you break it down that way, because it shows me a lot about how we do learn. Lovejoy says me. I guess she's saying she's a pattern learner.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think it really helps we won't be able to avoid misunderstandings, but we'll know where the breakdown was or the separation of the thoughts were, so we can fix those things. But without this type of understanding, I see us moving further and further apart. What is interesting to me, and you said we identify with one of these, but if you look at an infant, you see a infant go through cycles of all of these styles, and then they kind of adapt one of them, or one of them kind of becomes the dominant one in them. And that when you were talking, that's what I saw a child being able to, when they in that touching phase, where they got to taste everything and they got to feel everything. They even have toys that kind of heighten those sensory type of nerves in them. And then they go through this phase where they're yelling and screaming, and it's all about the sound or how they are communicating. And then you have the one that's the more inquisitive one, that's more quiet, and that's just watching everything. So we see this in children, but then somehow I think life and experience forces them to kind of gravitate towards one understanding of themselves, and then they are defined with one of these learning styles.
Facts. And ooh, you just brought in a good point because all right, so oh man. Yeah, okay. So listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. I have a daughter, my youngest daughter, she is a auditorial learner.
Hmm.
She is a visual teacher and she is a step-by-step memory. So she remembers, like when she's talking, she's still in the stage of talking. So
Hmm.
her learning style is audio, but since her memory style is cyclical, when she's saying something, she tends to repeat it more than one time. So she'll be like, daddy, daddy, or water, water, because she's remembering that how to say it, but because it's cyclical and rotates in her mind the way when she's learning it, at that moment she's speaking on it. So it comes out as saying it twice or three times because she's still in the beginning stages of learning sound, remembering the sound through the cycles. When it
Right.
comes to her teaching me something, she tends to be more visual. Like she wants some water before she'll say it, she'll be like, ah, like that. And then I have to tell her, say,
You,
Daddy,
yeah.
can I have some water?
Use
And
the
I have to
words. Use the words. I've said
using the
that
word.
before.
But she's naturally teaching me the visuals. That's her style of teaching. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
having to show her how to learn. She's learning how to put the sound to the vision because that's her learning style. She's learned her learning style is auditorial. So she's naturally visually teaching. She knows all the information. She can show it to you. But the
Mm-hmm.
challenging part is how to create the value to what I'm actually showing you the correct sound. And
Right.
then when she's remembering it, she tends to repeat it because it's a process of her remembering it. So therefore, in a person's mind, she may remember the pattern to something, but
Mm-hmm.
is now she has to be able to know how to turn that pattern or that process into something that is shown. So you know the process, but how do you show it? So it's like if, for example, like I know you step by step memory, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
correct, yeah, step by step memory.
Mm-hmm.
So you remember the patterns, and
Right.
you pretty much just like her on that same tip, right? All right, so
Yeah, I
um,
kind of felt what you were saying when you described it to me the first time. Yeah.
yeah, so you already getting like turning, the process, but then when it's time for you to show it,
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit difficult,
Yeah.
even though you know the steps, but it's like, oh, now I gotta actually show it. It's like, okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it become challenging, and people would take like that aspect of a person not knowing something, like you totally know it. The difficulty is how to teach it.
translating it into my communication. So I think the ladies are getting to where we wanted this conversation to go to. So Nia says step by step learning can make difficult I guess can be made difficult to communicate in some relationships. That person, because I think that person
Mhm.
is perceived as anal retentive. That person got to do everything by the book. That person that wants everything in its place. I think that's what that person is typically represented as in real life. But now you understand what their learning style is, and probably their teaching style is something that we have to then discover on top of that. Um, uh, LaJoy says, and I hope I'm saying your name right. She says, I agree, Nia. I have run into a lot of situations where there was a disconnect because I need things to be broken down step by step, and I have to know the details and give details.
Mhm.
So they,
And okay, so listen to this process, organize this process,
yes,
experience this
by the book.
process. Facts. And I'm going to tell you why it's like that. Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. We have not been taught how to put things in this proper place, and people that learn that way are definitely fully aware that we don't know the laws to
Right.
things,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
true laws to things. They got us memorization something laws that are not even true laws. So it's like the sun goes up and the sun goes down, but what is the process to why that does that?
Yeah.
There's a process to that.
What
Why is that
controls
not
that?
being communicated? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I
Hmm.
can't understand the sun because nobody has actually broke it down to me. So
Right.
therefore, that information is being missed. So it's just showing everybody has suffered from this European slave colonialization of taking us out of our ancestral true knowledge of self because
And
we're not
I'm
getting it.
curious, does LaJoy, do you know your teaching style? Or your mem I can see this broken down, your memory style. I think that would be interesting to kind of tap into that if she's not aware of that already. Nia says Uh, Lovejoy, that's a lot of disagreement when trying to communicate the need to have things broken down. I think I know there's a lot of disagreements when trying to communicate the need to have things broken down. I I I, I want to ask why. Why is there so many disagreements? Or, for you, Taki, do you understand why there may be so many disagreements when dealing with that type of individual, like a Lovejoy? I can call
Um,
that Lovejoy, LaJoy.
Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. It's really because this society has taught us to put more energy into a belief instead of actually the process. They tell you that you get from your house, from your car to your house based off your belief. Really, you get there based off the steps to actually is steps that get you from your car to your house. The
Right.
movement gets you there, but they want to put it into the belief. But it's easily to fix this problem by just acknowledging the mantra that brings the information into step by step information by simply saying organize. Automatically, it gives them the ability to start compartmentalizing because that's how they got to do. They got to know they can arrange it. So when you say organize, I'm putting the power in your hand to put this into proper placement based off how you proper place, how it is proper place within the way that you designed to place them. And
Mm-hmm.
what am I giving you the ability to organize? I'm giving you the ability to organize either a sound if I'm an auditorial teacher, a vision if I'm a visual teacher,
Mm-hmm.
a experience if I'm a feeling teacher, and a process if I'm a cyclic movement teacher. So all you have to do to a person that's a step-by-step learner is simply say organize, and whatever your teaching style is, put that behind it and then give the information. So I would simply say organize this process, everything that is communicated from that point will be simply understood correctly and accurately because it has now been broke down because I used the keyword organized, and that means everything coming behind it is being broke down. And what's being broke down? This process. Simple.
LaJoy says, "Yeah, I need to know what happens to the sun when it goes down too." And I think, and we're gonna have. I want this definitely be one of our future conversations too. Um, Once you become aware of, say, your child's learning style, or your partner's learning style, or your student's learning style, how that will then help you. Like for me, and you speaking about your daughter, I am saying to you, don't slack up on her, because I got through school, I used my personality. They knew what I knew I was talking about because I can apply it. But my personality, and because I was a good, quote unquote, good kid, I never got in trouble for not doing the work. So
Mm-hmm.
stick on her. So that rhythm of finishing and following through is something, because as you get older, that becomes more and more difficult to follow through. She's a great idea person. She probably is going to start showing you great ideas, but the follow through to that, or she's going to get her other siblings or her other cousins to do the work for her, opposed to her doing it and finishing it herself. Then people are going to get frustrated with that because they're going to get tired of doing her work for her. And then it's going to come a time where she's going to have to do it herself. And it's going to be nobody around to do it or finish it for her. So once we become aware of each other, it becomes now our responsibility to keep us together in terms of making us aware of it. And then that opens up the communication for us to be able to have a healthy check and balance system amongst each other versus it's confrontation or competition.
Mm.
Uh, Nia says, also we're taught to overlook the stages and assume what the overall picture is or could be.
Mm.
LaJoy says, I believe my teaching style is also step by step. Is that possible for them to be the same?
Mm. Now they couldn't be the same because they can't occupy the same space at the same time.
So knowing what her learning style is, what would you say to her to be able to identify her teaching style?
If I'm not mistaken, I think her teaching style is auditorial. And I think her memorization style is visual, and her present moment is experience. So from that explanation of saying that she believed that she was communicating the value,
Mm,
the value of it, which lets me know that it's sound. That's auditorial. So her teaching style is actually auditorial because what she's gonna communicate is the value of things. She's gonna communicate the exact value of it.
mm, mm. I think Davinia says help them execute ideas into manifestation. Exactly. So that's what I needed growing up. But when you're able to identify those things in those learning style, memory style, present moment styles, how then should people take that? Like you just gave her all four of her styles. Now how should she take that?
All right. So listen to this process, experience this process, organize this process, watch this process. She would have to take it as a process. And the thing about it is, me, the way I give information, I am naturally a process teacher. I give steps.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about steps is nothing that I teach is actually going to make all the most sense right now. It makes sense over steps, over constantly doing it in cycles. It gets deeper and creates layers of understanding. So what is gotten from it now is all that can be getting from the first step. It's like if somebody say, hey, it's some great news, a great thing is going to happen tomorrow when you go to work, you're going to get $100. That the
Mm.
first step of it is you just hearing it. Now it ain't happened yet, and now you at the beginning stage where is this person telling the truth or not? You're gonna go through that, but it still doesn't stop. The next step is you're still gonna go to work, and when you go to work, you're gonna be going through the process of thinking, well, when is it gonna, who is the person gonna give it to me? You got to go through your day dealing with that, and then next thing you know, boom, here goes a check.
Right.
Here's $100. Like, wow, that junk crazy. Now you got to go through the process of, dang, told me, how the heck did he know that? Now I just go to the process with, dang, am I gonna see the person again? Is it gonna happen again? What
Hmm.
was it? But all of that was presented in the first initial conversation. But because the movement is cyclical, is motion, is not pictorial of just boom, just there, is everything is a process.
Hmm.
Everything that I teach is the motion. So it's like you're not going to get everything on the first step. You're only going to get as much as what is required in the first step of understanding. The next
Right.
time it layers up and gains more, and the next time it gains. But everything that I'm saying is always in the beginning of the first. But it's
Yeah.
just it takes a minute. Everything is on time. So my motto is I could present to, I could tell, I could give a person the steps, but I cannot control the time in which it takes in order to complete them.
And it's probably different for each individual as well. Uh,
Mhm.
Davinia, and I think we touched on this a little bit. She says, "Right, it will provide clarity for understanding and comprehension of the process." Oh, I think I jumped. That's what she just said, and then she said before that, "What if the person has a combined style?" And she asked that as a question: visual, tactile, auditorial. But you answer this question, but can you answer this question for Davinia?
Combined style. All right, so listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. When we say combined style, all of the styles itself is a combination
Mm-hmm.
because there's
Mm-hmm.
four styles. So we're getting the fact that we are feeling, which is what you're communicating, is sounds like you are gotta be a feeling learner, to use the word combined, because you know that all of the styles existing, but
Mm-hmm.
because feeling doesn't give visual information, meaning it doesn't actually pinpoint location.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's using combined style, because it's not visually seen that it actually is a division between things. Because one thing that the eyes does, we could say we're all one, but the eyes show that we're different heights, we're different weights, we're different here, we're different there. You know what I'm saying? But the feeling is we're all, but the eyes is going to be the judgment. The eyes going to show that there's placements and things. So when it
Mm-hmm.
gets to the visual aspect, okay, now we see, okay, well, yeah, they can't occupy the same space. If you're auditorial here, you can't be auditorial here. That's like saying it's two norths or it's two
Mm-hmm.
west. Like, nah, it's impossible. It's gonna be a west and it's gonna be an east. It's gonna be a masculine, it's gonna be a feminine. Everything has complementary partners. They're not at the same place at the same time. It just doesn't work that way. So that's why they can't be. You can't be all of the type of learners or all of the type of teachers. You got to
Now,
look at this direction. You can't be, every direction is not going to be north. You can't have two norths or two
right.
souths.
So Davinia, she brought up. She said, "I'm neurodivergent, autistic," and this is a. It's not a new thought or a process. There are a lot of people who are out there who are neurodivergent, but these learning styles still apply to autism. Because autism is on a spectrum. It isn't one type of behavior or one type of learning style. And being autistic is basically you just learn differently than other people. So it may appear that you're tapping into a visual learner or auditory learner or step by step. You may be feeling those things, but as Takia said, it may be that your teaching style is different from your learning style, is different from your memory style, is different from your present moment style. Did I say that correctly?
Right.
Right.
So let me see. So when I see these type of terminology, what did she say?
Neurodivergent is a form of autism.
And they say neurodivergent refers to a variation of human brain regarding sociability, learning, attention, mood, and other mental function. And
Hmm.
it was coined in 1998 by Judy Springfield popularized the concept with the journalist Harvey Bloom. See, when I know Europeans are putting it together, they really bring even more confusion. Something that's supposed to be very simple. So they got neuroversion. This is how they label it. It refers to a variation in the human brain, and they're calling a variation in the human brain sociability, learning, attention, mood, and other mental functions in a non-pathological sense. Sociability is the way you get along with people, and it's not learning a part of being social.
Mm,
So how can you separate sociability from learning? Then they say attention. In order for you to be sociable, do you not have to have a sense of focus? How can you be social if you can't see? What are
mm,
you being social with? And then mood. Your mood, every everything in life is accompanied with a mood. It's a mood
right.
is just an emotion that lasts long. An
And
emotion that has longevity is a mood.
and as we were talking when we first met, this is one of the things that I was pointing out in general. So you typically, as a teacher, you have a classroom full of students, and for Divinia, I have this book, and I have all of their IEPs in it, and that's their special learning conditions, and their how we help that in terms of teaching. But the way you are explaining this will help all children, will help all teachers, will help all parents. In terms of me being able to identify, because even saying, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not a therapist, but this is just my understanding being a teacher and being given a book with a list of IEPs for that class. Uh, it will help us do is to understand how you learn at its simplest form. And that's a part of psychology that I don't like either, because they add these big $15 words to symptoms and conditions that are in everybody. I believe we're all on a spectrum, to be perfectly honest with you, but we have to learn how I learn. And this neurodivergent person will learn differently than this neurodivergent person, that will learn differently than this person who is not considered neurodivergent. And it's just that's why I was so open to helping you to get this message out, because I think typically it will help us to learn how to communicate with each other. If I learn how you learn, and if I learn how you teach, give and receive
Right.
information, it will help us to be more beneficial. Nia says, are more dominant than the other styles? So, more if one of the teaching or learning styles is one of them more dominant than the other ones?
Hmm. Um, Listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. None of the styles are more dominant than the other, but it can be perceived as dominant based off of your learning style. So if you
Mm-hmm.
are a auditorial learner and you come across a person who is an auditorial teacher, then you would say that the auditorial teacher is dominant because that has a magnetic pull on you.
Right.
But if
Right.
that person is a visual teacher and you might be a visual thinker, then you are like, oh, that's not dominant because that visual teacher sends you into la la land because you have to
Right.
travel to your past or future. So the dominance is
Right.
only relative based off of your learning style. And everybody has different teaching styles. So particularly what we're going to call dominating is two, what I've noticed in this fraction is two aspects that are being labeled as dominating. And that's either the way, if you come across a person that teaches the way that you learn, or you come across a person that teaches the way that you presently exist.
Yes. Yes.
Those two are what we're being labeling as dominant factors in our life. The people that teach the way we think and teach the way that we teach, we tend to say that they're not dominant because if they teach the same way you teach, then they're not bringing nothing really necessarily new to you. So that's not dominating.
Hmm.
And if they teach the way that you think, then they're just sending you into memory lane or la la land. So that's not really like a dominating thing. But if somebody could teach your present moment, it just like throws you in there with that. Now you like, oh, that's dominating. Or somebody has a magnetic pull on it, you're just simply taking in
Right.
that knowledge like that. You're like, oh, that's dominating. But it just depends on that person's teaching style and if that teaching style complements your learning style or your present moment, and that's what we're labeling as dominant.
Right. So real quick, I said the word IEP, and I just want to make reference to it because Lovejoy says she's familiar with it. It simply is your individual education program. So if you require one on one, if that your learning style requires for you to have an individual person sit next to you and help you in class, that's a part of your IEP. If your IEP is if you have a urinary tract problem, meaning you can't hold your urine. Part of your IEP then becomes if I say I have to use the bathroom, I have to use the bathroom. I'm not just trying to get out of the class. So all of these things, and I don't want to disrespect Davinia either because she just made a statement. Everyone isn't on the autism spectrum to say that negates our struggle, especially non-verbal autistic individuals. I just happen to be a so-called high functioning and verbal. And again, I'm not doing that. But what I'm saying to you is when we're in there, these four types of learning styles, and if you go to textbooks, they'll come up with three additional ones. The problem is if I am a teacher in a classroom, which I am, and I'm not aware of everyone's teaching, everyone's learning style, and how they give and receive information. If I don't have any awareness of that, I am doing to them what you will feel being autistic. So the same feeling,
Yeah,
it may be for two different reasons, but because that child is not being able to function in this class properly, because I'm not aware of their learning style, I am now treating them the same way that you may feel being autistic. And that's
yeah,
the similarity that I'm connecting with it. It's not that I feel like you feel being autistic because I don't. And there's nothing wrong with that. But simply if you're in the right environment with the right instructors that know how you learn, being autistic, you're going to learn, even if you're verbal or nonverbal, you're going to learn how to learn better. You're going to learn better. You're going to retain more. You're going to remember more. You're going to be more present in that moment than if I don't understand that. And that's one of the reasons that they're putting autistic children, behavioral problems, where they used to be in a special education environment, they're mixing them in now with the general population of the schools, because they have realized that even if you have a behavioral problem, if you have a neurological problem, there are still students who don't have those particular issues that will help you to learn better. And one of the things that I told Taki was me going into my next school year, that's one of the things that I'm going to implement. Like once I discover your learning style, I'm going to group you with other students that have complementary learning and teaching styles. So you all can help, all those students can help each other. And that's why they're now grouping all those students in the same room because they feel like those students can help these students. So I hope you didn't get offended, Mr. Vinia, but I wanted to make sure uh, I explained that. Yes, the individual education plan is what an IEP stands for. Uh, LaJoy says this information should be required in schools and workplaces. I am pushing Taki to make that possible in life. So, LaJoy, please share this with any educators, any administrators, anybody that works in an environment with children. Share this live with them, and the subsequent lives that we'll have coming up. I want Taki to be at the helm of this type of information, and I'm pushing him as hard as he'll allow me to push him to get to that point. Go ahead, Taki.
Listen to this process, organize this process, experience the process, watch this process. And you see how she says this information should be put out there in the workplace. That's how you know auditorial teachers, because she's communicating the value.
Right, the
This is the
value.
value of this. This is what the weight of it is. This is the value of the whole overall thing. This is where the value. This is where it needs to belong. This is where it has to be. And
Mm-hmm.
to what Divine was saying earlier, the thing about when it comes to autism and just what they would call, I guess, like the regular population of children or whatever you want to put
Mm-hmm.
into it, is what they're doing is using visual focal point. So
Right.
they put the focal point and say, okay, this is autism, and you have to formulate information this way in order for it to learn. But then what they call the regular social norm, we're not going to put a visual aspect on that particular perspective, and how those children are going through the same thing because there's not nothing formulated. But then these children get drug addictions. These children go out and kill one another. They
Right.
go out and use masturbation and sex to try to escape this fact that they never knew. No one taught, no one formulated things. So then that behavior, there's a drug market for it. There's money for them to capitalize off of
Mm-hmm.
not putting the focus on it because it's all about making money in the end. So they don't want the narrative and the focal point to be the same way on that because they got a market that they're trying to capitalize off of. So that's
Right.
why they don't shine it like that. So when you are able to provide an environment and communicate to a child the way that they learn, they are able
Mm-hmm.
to thrive in that and move a lot better. They give you a
Right.
better cell phone and say you're going to have better communication because you got Wi-Fi. But during the phone call, you're not communicating in that person learning style and not aware of the teaching style. So it don't matter how high tech it is, we're still just communicating the same dysfunction.
Right, right. Davinia says you're right. Environment and education understanding is key. That's why she teaches, or I'm sorry, they teach. She teaches education, sensory processing disorder, and partial facial seizure accompanying neurodivergency. LaJoy says, "I will. This is crucial." Davinia came back. This is a necessary discussion. I sent this to the educators in my inbox. Please
Wow.
and thank you.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and LaJoy says, preach. It is definitely necessary. I would not, I definitely love my sleep and my rest, and I would be in the bed otherwise. But I think this is so necessary. One, because even somebody who has been uh, an art educator for probably close to 12 years now, it's still, you don't, it's still things that they don't teach you that you have to learn in the classroom. And even in the classroom, you miss these things because you just think that that child has a behavioral problem. Or you look at the IEP list and it says Davinia has is neural what do you call it, neural divergent, or you just see a clinical definition, but there's still no solution to how you teach that person. Everything is considered an experiment, and we have to begin to learn how I receive information, how I give information. And that's, it goes beyond the classroom even. That's how I communicate with Taki. That's how I communicate with, my customers, with my students, with, with people that I just come across with. Communication is, the for me, the foundation of this. And once we learn how to effectively communicate with each other, and not on a clinical level, not on a hood level, but honestly learning how to communicate, we'll see a surgence of success in our classrooms and our family relationships and our intimate relationships and our platonic relationships and just in community in general. Once we learn how to be aware and identify our own learning styles and the learning styles of the people around us. uh Nia says, "Wow, I hate to miss the rest of the session. However, I had to get some rest. This information is so refreshing. Thank you so much for sharing. Please share it out, and you can come back and watch it later on." Nia, thank you for joining us. She was on the live that I was doing before this as well. So thank you for staying up for
Yeah,
this.
love, respect.
LaJoy says, "My daughter was diagnosed with autism. She had an IEP. I pulled her and my son out of public schools, and they have been homeschooled for 4 years now, which is probably helping them to get the one-on-one information that they need. Good night, Nia.
Good
And
night.
LaJoy says good night, Nia. So yeah. So, sir, I'm telling you, this information, once people hear it, they need it. It
Mm,
is so your research and your process of creating this is not falling on deaf ears. It's going to take individuals like the people watching tonight to share the message out so other people can hear it and see it and really find the value in it for what they're doing and in their relationships. And I will say, and I'm glad you said that earlier, this isn't just about a teacher standing in front of a classroom full of students. This is this in general how we need to communicate.
mhm.
So do you want to close this out, sir? Or do you have some
Um,
final remarks?
so listen to this process, organize this process, experience this process, watch this process. I would just want to just say what helps to strengthen our ability to practice these techniques would just take time out of the day to just, if you're a female, ask yourself, it doesn't matter what's going on. Just at the moment notice, how do I feel? Actually ask yourself, how do I feel? Say it. Then ask yourself, what do I think about this feeling? And then communicate what you think about this feeling. Then ask yourself, how do I feel about that thought? Then ask yourself, what do I think about that feeling? And practice listening to yourself express your thoughts and your feeling on whatever situation is. And the more you practice your brain into listening and communicating with yourself, the more you'll be fine tuning and being able to hear the different types of learning styles and being able to hear this information articulate. But you have to hear within yourself by navigating your thoughts and your feelings, or your feelings and your thoughts. For me, the
Right.
same thing. Do thought, feeling, then ask yourself, what do you think? Then ask yourself, how do you feel? And ask yourself, what do you think about that feeling? How do you feel about that thought? And listen to yourself. So
Mhm.
this would be something that could be applicable, that everybody can use in their everyday life, any time of the day, any situation, and you will be surprised at the knowledge that you'll pull from within yourself by just navigating it. Things that would take you 4 years to understand, you'll be able to understand it in 5 minutes.
Mm. Yes, yes, yes. Davinia, last remark. Same near my village created different kind of smart to educate my children. Now serving other scholars in our community. Excellent subject. I appreciate you both. Davinia says, appreciate you both. Thank you, Davinia. Thank you, Taki. We're going to continue this conversation. There are going to be different perspectives in this conversation, but it's definitely driving the issue of home of being aware and learning your teaching learning style in terms of being more effective in your communication and how we communicate with each other. So thank you all for tuning in, and I'm gonna let Taiki close us out.
Um, Listen to this process, organize this process, experience process, watch process. I just want to thank everybody that came to watch the show. Thank you, Brother Nate, for providing a platform. Thank you, Love Joy, Nia, and Divine. Um, that energy bringing into the conversation led it to getting into deeper aspects that we needed to touch on and bring more clarity for anybody that's watching, for they may have to be asking those same questions, and everybody's different type of teacher. So we got a visual teacher, a process teacher. I know we had an auditorial. I'm not sure what Nina Divinity was, but I'm sure they probably taught the other missing aspects. And because those elements was there, that information that we're teaching today was able to spread into those four aspects. So everybody was able to gain something from it because it was formulated into four different teaching styles. So it was broken. It was communicated. So these conversations, like I said, we'll do this another 2 weeks again, and we get deeper and deeper each time. Like I said, I'm a process teacher, so I wish I did have the ability to just give it all in just one whop and just make it be like boom, that's what it is. But this is a process.
Hmm.
So each time we're just going to keep on going, and it's not something that is, I don't see an end to it, is what I'm saying. So it's everlasting, because everything is always in motion.
Right.
So we're just building.
Thank you all. Have a great night and stay tuned. Subscribe to the page so you get alert when we come back. And Taki is definitely coming back. So peace out to everybody and good night.
Good night.